And they're charged, and this program is participatory, it's community oriented, and the goal is to empower private landowners, especially women. But also in countries like India with scarcity of domestic resource mobilization, this is a great way or a promising way to use land more efficiently and to generate revenues from it. Second, because in countries like India, land is a state responsibility, it's not a central responsibility. There's great variance in how state regulations are kind of taken in place. And what this program has done is got states to adjust the regulatory frameworks to take advantage of these kind of central programs. And third is in terms of coverage and cost, Klaus told me a very interesting number, that because of drones and images that have been used for about 300,000 villages, this program's only costing us $100 per village. Back in the time when the World Bank started working on similar programs, it used to cost $100 an individual. This is really transformational, right? So it's huge scale economies. And so even for countries around the world, low and middle income countries, this is not something that's out of your realm, right? And so I'm really excited to welcome the Secretary to tell us about the program, to motivate kind of the rationale, but also the successes and what other countries can learn from it. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So let me share a small.
On April 24th, 2020, the Government of India launched a revolutionary initiative, SVAMITVA. The objective of this scheme is to grant every villager in inhabited area of village ownership rights to their house by leveraging accurate property demarcation, drone surveys, and CORS technology. Maps are being created to ensure that villages across the country are properly mapped and every rural family secures its property rights. With digital land records, village council schemes are becoming more precise and effective. With official property documents, villagers are becoming self-reliant. Access to bank loans is paving the way for economic empowerment in rural India.
उस अधिकार पत्र से मैंने बैंक में मुझे बहुत आसानी से लोन मिल गया 2,90,000 रुपए का। और जो मेरा कच्चा मकान था, कुछ पैसे उसमें लगाए, उसमें से कुछ पैसे बचा के वही दुकान मैंने एक किराए से दुकान ली। अब स्थायी रूप से मैं दुकान कर रहा हूँ।
Moreover, women's empowerment has been strengthened as property cards now recognize them as co-owners.
હું પહેલા ગૃહિણી હતી અને આ પ્રોપર્ટી કાર્ડ મળવાથી હવે હું આ ઘરની માલિક પણ બની ગઈ છું.
So far, about 24.4 million property cards have been prepared for more than 164,000 villages. My property, my right. The foundation of progressive villages.
I think he will run a presentation. Now, sorry, I think.
Yeah, class next.
I think we run the presentation.
Yes.
We run the presentation, sir, and you will be making your look.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here in such large numbers. This is a little overwhelming. I would talk to you briefly about the scheme that we are all interested in. Incidentally, SVAMITVA, it sounds like a bit of a tongue twister. It means ownership. So Swami is the owner and the attribute of being its owner is SVAMITVA. So we were able to make this acronym out of which the letter I is important because it uses not just technology, but it mixes it with a lot of on-ground operations that inspire a great deal of confidence. Another thing, in the areas where these maps are being created, there were little or no legacy records. That's very important to understand. So we didn't have to contend with a resurvey. It was the first time operation being carried out. So if people had differences, they had to choose between persisting with their differences or getting their property cards. That is the objective. The record of rights have to be provided to all the people living inside the inhabited areas. Again, a clarification: this is not the agricultural fields and other lands. This is where the houses are in cluster and people are living together. And I suppose in most of us, our countries that are here, we have a similar situation where we had a foreign ruler. So there were some parcels that were left from the mapping exercise. And through this efficient application of this technology, it was mentioned that it costs about $100 a village. A village would have something between 100 to 250 households. It would vary, this inhabited area would vary in size from 1 square kilometer to 3.5 to 4 square kilometers, depending on which part of our country we are in. And from the date of drone flying till the date of receiving your property card in your hands, it takes 60 to 70 days with the ground verification and everything is completed. CORS network, the course network was extremely important because the map that is being produced has 5 centimeter accuracy. And that is how we've been able to turn it into a tool for efficient planning. Survey of India are, of course, our technology partners. They are represented here by the Additional Surveyor General of India. And so they put us firmly on this platform. And initially, there was some confusion whether drone technology can be adopted at such a large scale or not. But Survey of India were very clear. They validated this in a place in Maharashtra, and we just took it forward from there. So on the bottom bar, facilitation of monetization of assets that's been mentioned, property-related disputes, and determination of property tax. In fact, that is how it began in a handful of states. We do have a system of property tax. And so what we had was a property register in which the names of people and the areas mapped to them would be mentioned. And that has now been updated because through an API, once the property cards have all been distributed, it gets ported onto a platform that we are currently piloting in a couple of states. And through the application of a standard rate, the property tax assessment is very easily done. The land records have been created in not in all the states, but in the more progressive states and the bigger states. The maps have been integrated with the existing records of the land revenue department.
Can you ask questions now? We want to wait again. We've planned that the question we'll have the Q&A session after the presentation.
This is just the workflow. The states have to be on board. So it is the first step is extremely important that the state has to agree to come to a table. There's the standard MOU that was circulated, and Survey of India and the state signed the memorandum of understanding. Remember, we are the rural local governance people. We have nothing to do with land measurement or survey. That is not on our charter. So having done that, we quickly go to the villages, the identification. The state does that. The CORS stations are located, and then the Awadi area is defined in the film. If you remember, there were people drawing lines with limestone powder. So that is how you demarcate your property. And wherever the walls, the boundaries between properties are not clear, tuna lines are discontinuous tuna lines are made there as well. And tuna is limestone powder. Then, of course, the drone flies up. It takes, if it's a fixed wing drone, it takes about 15 minutes. And if it's a quadcopter or octocopter, it may take up to 40 minutes. And your village is completed. And this is the same thing in pictures. The first picture on the left that you see, that gentleman died during COVID. I keep making a mention of it because the half of the entire work that's been done in our country is in Uttar Pradesh. Then, of course, there are public meetings, the village council meetings, what are addressed in Gram Sabha here. There is information and dissemination on a very large scale. There are wall paintings done. Then, of course, there is the limestone line marking and drone flying. Then we get back to the lab where in processing features are extracted after the overrides have been produced. And these maps are then provided to the state who have to go to each of these parcels. In some states, they issue individual notices to each of the property owners. People make their spelling corrections, people make their boundary corrections, and these discussions are facilitated by the village council, which is our Gram Sabha. There is an objection, and the state provides the map after correction back to Survey of India, who incorporate these corrections. Then it goes into the claims and objection stage, which the duration of which varies from 10 days in the case of Uttarakhand, which is one state, to 3 months in the case of Punjab, where most of the people are in Canada. This is our, and so the coverage is pretty large, as you can see. And so far, the area that has been mapped, it corresponds to about of all the Abadi or the inhabited areas, 68,000 square kilometer of area has been mapped. The land value that has been monetized based on the circle rates or the average rates of property that are determined by the states is of the order of 1,100 billion. Some other interesting things have happened since the time we made a beginning. There has been a new drone policy which makes it possible for Survey of India to have drone as a service now, so they don't need to have big inventories. The geospatial policy came, so it become possible to have the map work completely outsourced. CORS, of course, stays with Survey of India, who are the custodians of that, of the use of the information that is being created. As a result of the geospatial policy and drone policy, we have now several little organizations who come up with a few drones or with the infrastructure necessary for converting these maps. So we made the beginning in terms of dissemination of the idea in a workshop that we did earlier this year, and which had participation from 22 countries, some of whom would be here. And we found that there was a great deal of interest because the predicament was very similar between one and the other. So the economy of scale, the time that it's going to take, the chances of being able to pull it off in the first attempt, the widespread use of CORS network, not just for survey, for a number of things, it can completely replace total station survey, which is what we tell all the people who we are talking to. There is a great deal of coordination because not only are there states, but there are departments within the states, and there was airport authority and DGCA and whatnot. So that takes a lot of doing, but policy changes take care of a lot of that. Community engagement is central to what we did because we are the community ministry of it. And the legal recognition of property rights, and finally, the leveraging of technology. The maps that have been created using the point cloud, we've also been able to turn them into digital terrain maps, and we've been able to do stuff with it, locating lights and having optimal access for garbage selection and so on. So that is it. Thank you for your patience.
So first of all, congratulations. This is a fantastic scheme. I didn't know the details, but I knew sort of a broad contours. So 2 questions and 1 suggestion. My questions are: number 1, what is the legal backing of this property card? Because as we know, the land is a state subject. So was an act passed or something like that's number 1. Second is, why not a small SWAMITVA scheme for land broadly? Why restricted only to homesteads? Because your land is a big constraint to growth in India. So that's the 2 questions. My suggestion is that since you mentioned other countries being interested, I would suggest that the Department of Panchayati Raj do like a plug and play kind of API, which any country can take and just use it for their, like in a very easy format. And I'm sure the bank can help in that.
So welcome.
The first question was about the legal backing to this. So when we first started talking to the states, it was very important that they understand the implications of this. Each state has their own revenue laws because it's a state subject. And all of them had to sign an agreement with the Survey of India, because that was the contractual agreement between a service provider and the state government. And subsequent to that, they also had to make amendments in the laws, which the states have done. And therefore, when a property card is given, it has the full backing of the law.
So all the states have passed it?
All the states which are participating in this have had their law amended. Not only have they amended their laws to recognize property cards, but also to mutate their revenue records, because this is going to be a continuous process. Otherwise, the property card, if it is not transferable, if a property is not transferable, it is really meaningless. So the other one was
For land broadly, why just home?
yes. So we were talking about how we got into this. We are the Ministry for Local Governance in the rural areas. Now, when the Prime Minister thought of this particular project, everybody thought this will fail. So there were no takers. So we raised our hand. So that's what actually happened. And because we are not the ministry which is in charge of agriculture or land, therefore we confined it to the inhabited areas. Now, subsequently, seeing the success of this project, the Ministry of Land Resources has taken it up and it's rolling it out throughout the country, and especially in the urban areas, because urban land records are a nightmare. And there the potential of unlocking of values in multiple. Your third was a suggestion.
Suggestion that we can, do a plug and play kind of software.
And we were actually looking forward to suggestions from everyone on how we could work that out.
So I just,
Yeah, please.
sorry, I just, just to find out, you said.
I'll just make a request that when you, before asking the question, if you could give a small introduction.
About you.
About
Oh,
yourself.
okay,
About
okay.
yourself.
Okay, thank you.
That'll
It
be
was just, I was just going to
Yeah.
plug. I had other questions, but this is a quick one. Okay, my name is Oluwatoyin Alonge, EDS, representing ED Zainab Ahmed from EDS 25. Okay, so I was just gonna, I know you said you started.
Large number of countries, and you can.
Yeah.
Oh,
mention
okay,
it.
from Nigeria, Angola, and South Africa. That's what the consistency like EDS 25 stands for. Some people might have long, but
Yeah.
we just have three. Okay, so I was just quickly going to ask if you had, I know you said you started, did you do like pilots before the Ministry of Land took over? Was it like, were those pilots, or you started in progression and
So
when
we-
you saw
we-
it was successful, they took over?
So we did a pilot in 9 states, and this is confined only to the part which is habited by the people. The one which is not is being handled by a separate ministry.
Oh, okay. So sorry, I don't understand. The one.
So there are several.
For instance, right?
So any village would have 2 parts to it. One would be farmland.
Mhm,
The other would be the residential part.
mhm.
So this is about the residential part.
Yes, okay.
It is not that the same technology, the same concepts and principles can't be applied to the other part.
Yeah.
It is just because we as a ministry don't have the jurisdiction there.
Right.
Okay.
So that's a technicality, actually.
Just sorry, just I know just a quick follow-up. So how did you, because I saw the limestone mapping, right? How eventually, when you're giving the titles, women, I'm trying to talk about women now. How do we ensure that most households are male dominated, we know. So once you're giving the title to, is it Mr. and Mrs.? Maybe this was a village. Is it going to be Is it joint ownership, or how do you ensure that women still get their rights in this?
So 13 states have passed laws which grant them co-ownership.
Enable policies.
Mr. and Mrs.
Enable policies.
Yes.
Okay.
By law.
Okay.
And there was a woman, I was anticipating a question. So there was a woman in the picture.
I saw just one woman. So
Yes.
that was fine.
Yeah, because there were only 2 case studies we could have put it in 1.5 minutes. So we ensured that it was 50%.
Understand. Okay. So policies. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And something that you economics Francisco was over. This is really a remarkable achievement, which you showed us.
Thank you.
But you make it sound like smooth sailing. And surely there must have been stumbling blocks. Where there is if another country tries to repeat it, what stumbling blocks will it bump into, and how did you solve them? Just
Okay.
a couple of examples.
So let me put it like this, that this is creation of an ecosystem. You may have good laws, but if we don't have the right technology, it won't work. Similarly, if you have good governance, but you don't have public participation, again, it won't work. So what we did was to get everything together. Fortunately, we have strong institutions in the form of village councils in the country. We have access to technology. In fact, the entire drone industry has, this is a major use case for the drone industry. And it has really taken off. And whenever the industry talks about, its growth, its turnover, its profits, most of it is attributed to this. So we were in a way lucky that we got everybody together. We were talking about difficulties. There are always difficulties in such a large scale. Our major constraint has been in terms of the personnel on the ground. Once the image is created, it has to be ground people. There, the revenue machinery has to come into play. And for years and years, there's been no recruitment. They're deficient in manpower. So that has been a major constraint. There have been minor constraints like, drones, crashing into fields, and ours is a country which has the sea, which has the mountains, which has the desert, which has large parts which are totally inaccessible. So we have a very short working season in some places. Our costs went up because of those drones, or if you have the rains for 6 months and you can't fly. So we could have done it in less than $100. Yes, please.
Hello. So my name is Shanti Guardado. My name is from India, but I'm actually from Guatemala. I was just adopted for EDS 12. And I represent EDS 18, and we have all the Central American countries there, Mexico and Spain. So this is very welcome for me because my country has a lot of land issues. And I have 3 questions, if I may. One is regarding the geospatial and drone policy that you mentioned, and how does it work? With I understand that you need drones to do this, but I don't really quite get why do you need a policy for that? Maybe you can explain a little bit about it. And the second comment or maybe question I have is around the disputes. How are these handled? If, for example, the drone finds out that a house is built in somebody else's property. So how do you work around this? And just one last quick question is, what are the maybe average dimensions of the villages? Because
Average
dimensions,
of the villages.
because as in my country, we don't use villages, like a concept. It's either, house or farms, but maybe more like communities. But just to understand, the size of the land that is covered by the drone. So, thank you. And
Thank
great, thing.
So, we all have, or many of us have, our history where there was a imperial power which was governing our land systems. I think it is from there that we get this concept of control. And most departments tend to hoard data. They don't want to give access to other user agencies. That is something which we've all seen. So essentially, the geospatial policy provides access to all departments of the data within the government.
Oh, very important thing.
So the spatial data was all with the Survey of India. Incidentally, the Survey of India was established, if I know correctly, before the British survey. 1767. So for the last 300 years, they've been ensuring that nobody gets their hands on it.
Okay.
So that's what essentially the policy does. Then we have, great security concerns in the country. So our security agencies were very wary of drones being used. And can they be used in all the areas? So it is these matters which the geospatial policy has straightened out. Second was about disputes. So the entire process is community-based, community-led. The first, when the information is given that your village is going to be mapped, it is the village council which brings it to notice of all the villagers. Then they give you a schedule that on this day the drone would be flying. But before that, you have to demarcate the farmland separately and the homestead separately, because we're only mapping the homestead. But that is, like I said, same technology, same principles can be, it's just a technicality that why we are only doing the homesteads. So once that is done, once the demarcation is done, then the first time the drone flies, and if there are any deficiencies in the first image, there could be shade, there could be cloud, there could be other reasons. So then they will look at it and they will say that this part maybe you have to fly again, or this is fine. Once that is done, then again the drone flies. That is the map 2. Once the map 2 comes in, the community sits down and looks at the map. We've shown pictures of that. So the Gram Sabha will sit down, look at the map, and there is a legal process involved where a notice is given in case of a dispute. And you can claim that this is not my land, it is that land, or you can object that how is it that he's claiming that land is my land. So there's a process of claims and objections written into the law, and that is the time period that he was talking about, 10 days, 30 days. Usually it's a time of 30 days. Once that period is over, once you've claimed or objected to, then again the decisions will be taken. So the community is involved at all steps, and therefore we've not had disputes. In fact, this has ensured that disputes have been settled. May I just finish with
Yes.
So the Unfortunately, in India, there's nothing called an average.
Could be small.
So we have villages where in states which have a population of 20,000, 25,000.
Oh.
There are villages which have a population of 500, 200.
Mhm.
Just would like to supplement one thing. I think there have been a few questions about the habitations and the farmland. So it's not the issue of the two departments, but you have to understand that there was no, as Secretary had mentioned, there was no record of rights. There was no paper for the
Homestead.
For the homestead. There is already record of rights. There is already title for the agricultural area. There are very good maps also. So that will be, this was a fresh survey, so they were not, as Sir mentioned,
Right.
that you had a choice whether to take a title paper or just leave it and keep the dispute.
Because you can have it.
They already have a title. So that's a case of a resurvey. Of course, the separate department has to deal with that. But this is another major difference because we already have, and there again, the geospatial.
There's no legacy data there. Yeah. It's a fresh survey. Yes, please.
So maybe we can collect a couple of questions.
I have two questions. My name is Edin Sambagai. I come from Uganda. I'm a land economist by training and land governance specialist. In fact, we are currently working on the review and the revision of the National Land Policy 2013. But let me stop talking about myself. Let me go to the question. We talked about demarcation pass. Of course, when you are going to map, you need the demarcation. What system of demarcation are you using? Because I can see when you're trying to map. Question number 2 is the standards. Standards, yeah. Yeah, Surveyor General, what did you call it?
He's here now.
Where is he?
He shifted the moment you started.
I'm looking at you. You're a British colony. You were a British colony. We were a British colony. And the British, they brought these torrents from Australia.
Yes.
Which they don't even use in England. And they made like big 6 boundaries. What's the other one? Land surveyor. General. They insist. They don't use, they have general boundaries in England. I studied my master, it's quite bad. Now, how have you, how have you solved this issue? And these land surveyors, my God, they still insist on that accuracy, whatever, high standards. Appropriate technology, what do you call it these days? Compass. Well, they don't want to hear those things. Even in Uganda, we're having problems trying to tell that piece of things like you studied 30 years ago and things have changed. So how have you maneuvered those things?
You want to answer?
Initially, let me say, even up to 2017, we were very skeptical about the drone technology and the accuracy that it would have given us. So we believed in conventional photogrammetry. All our previous projects used to be with aircraft fitted with standard cameras, with survey-grade cameras. But surprisingly, when the POC, the proof of concept, was carried out, we were able to achieve the accuracy up to 5 centimeters or better than 5 centimeters. And
usually 2 to 3 centimeters.
Usually 2 to 3 centimeters as well. And we had, before that, the infrastructure of the CRS system. The CRS system is able to give us the control points better than 3 centimeters in near real time. And so with this framework, we were able to ensure that their desired accuracy is achieved. And that is the main standard. Means if I am able to be in my national geodetic reference frame with this standard of accuracy, that was good enough for the cadastral purpose. So that served our purpose. And then the other standards which were there, say that we all know, the cartographic or how to survey it, all those standards are then simple to implement. The major thing was that, and that was taken care of.
Yeah, my name is Harsh. I'm a global lead for disruptive technology. Maybe I should call it fit for purpose disruptive technology. But quickly, there are two quick questions. One is, who has access to this data? Is there any form of it that's, obviously without the privacy concerns, just survey numbers and other things and boundaries? Are those public so people can do research and analysis on that kind of info? And the second is, as you roll it out to, I guess, the next half of the country, are there any indicators of success that you can start examining? For example, when they do this in urban areas, the tax revenue goes up and other things. So can we think of, other than, of course, giving people a title, which is such an important thing, are there any other indicators of success that could be?
Let's have a quick follow-up, please.
Or to make a couple of questions and then. Yes, Julie, and then Christian, and then Nina, and then here. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Willie Govender from Tinavital in South Africa. I think the success of this program has largely been driven by the fact that the Surveyor General adopted the fit for purpose methodology and simplicity of it. Because that's where, in most of the work that we do, we find the complexity is driven by the standards required, things like beaconing of properties, adopting these lines that you can draw on the maps and visibly extract features from it. So congratulations on keeping it simple. I think that is the most important thing, that you can bring down the cost by keeping it simple around it. But then I want to ask some questions around how we take the simple model into more complex environments, because villages are very simple environments, single story dwellings mostly, so you can demarcate a property without having multiple stories. That's my first one. How do we take that model into the urban environment? I guess it'd be too difficult to do that in the agricultural environment, because there the land demarcation is more complex and the disputes about boundaries will be more complex. The other one is the end game of this was that you wanted to give some people economic benefit. How did you arrive at the valuation? Okay, because you can demarcate the property and you have but what did you use to get a standard valuation that a bank could use?
Yes.
To get a bond or a loan on it, number one. And with those loans, are you recording those loans in your registry so if people know those properties are encumbered?
Christian? Yeah, also, my name is Christian. I'm from GSZ, working I've been working also in India, but like now in Ethiopia, supporting also their Ministry of Planning and Ministry of Agriculture, so rural lands. But like, I was wondering, so now roughly it costs you $30 million to register all the parcels, residential areas in 300,000 villages, yes? So where is this money coming from? And what is it about sustainability? Is the property tax then being collected? Is this being pulled back into the system? Or what about the sustainability if you roll this out to another million villages?
My name is Paula Dijkstra. I'm from Dutch Minister, International, and my question is mainly about the data that you have now collected. Because it's really impressive in what you achieved in a short amount of time, and also the scale in which you've collected, and it's a really inspiring example for other countries and other settings as well. But having that collected, you have now more than 300,000 villages with more data. And I'm also wondering, what does that mean for local institutions to maintain that data? And also, what kind of skills and hardware are required? So we can elaborate on that.
The data.
Maintain the data from the people perspective, but also from the infrastructure perspective.
So, just a follow-up, because I know we have in Nigeria, we have land is deeply rooted in ethnicity and community, so there's always a lot of dispute. How did you build the presentation said that initially there was resistance to the drone system. How did you build the trust? Because there's trust issues everywhere between the government, community, and everything. So how did you buy the community's trust? What did you do to make them comfortable with the?
Is that enough questions?
So I'll start with the valuation. In most countries, emerging economies, people try to evade tax. And for that reason, we undervalue property. When you undervalue property, you obviously pay less tax. In India, we have a system of circle rates, where the government determines the value of land. That is separate for urban areas, separate for rural areas. It'll be different. Even, of course, in a city, it'll be different in different locations. So we took the average, we took the lowest circle rate for rural India, which was only 1,000 rupees per meter. For Uttar Pradesh, it was 2,000 square feet. Right? Because it's a more fertile.
For Ghazipur, it was up to 5,000.
Yeah, but we took only 2,000.
Conservative.
So if you're talking about monetization of $1 trillion worth of land, it's actually an underestimate. It's the government of India which is funding it. It's not a very large amount. It's a very small amount, and like you said, it's very cost effective because the returns are in multiples. So it's the central government. Property tax is something which you've looked at. It is certainly very important to ensure that this is synced with the property tax. In fact, Mr. Nagar was talking about the example of Maharashtra, where there's a state in the country which already has rural property taxation. In fact, most of the states have rural property taxation. What we are doing is plugging in this SVAMITVA data into the ownership in the ledgers maintained by the villages. So we are actually building a portal called Samarth, where this entire data is ported, and it has been piloted in 2 states already. So this will ensure that all the properties are covered, because there might have been new houses which have been built, but which have not been enumerated, or they have been expanded. So all of that data, because now you see it from top, you can get away from it. So all of that data is being ported into a portal called Samarth. And like I said, it's been already piloted in 2 states. It'll be rolled out across the country. How did you gain the community's trust? Now, when there is somebody who comes from outside and tells you about the benefits of X or Y, it's very difficult to believe. But when it's your own brother, or when it's your own neighbor, it means something very different. Because this government official who comes to your village to tell you how wonderful it's going to be, he might disappear tomorrow. But your neighbor has to stay there with you. So it was the village community, the village council, which took ownership of this. They are the ones who told them that, this is the benefit, this is the way that we're going to go about it. So operationally, it was they who were doing it. And another good thing is that, it's not like a satellite where you're going to get a picture after a month. This is a drone. You can see the drone, and tomorrow you see the you see the film, and then you can identify your own plot. That makes a difference. In fact, we did a very successful OTT film on this, which has 8 million views on this project. Yeah. So, about data. Yeah.
Sorry, the question I had, you mentioned the problems about or mutations. What mutation fees do you charge? Do you charge stamp duty on the transactions?
Mutation is very minor. So there are two things.
Yeah.
One, of course, you mentioned the some kind of stamp duty on the transfer. Yes,
that's the transaction. That's the stamp duty.
That is registration. So first, it's a two-stage process. So when you transfer a property from A to B, so there is a stamp duty that is charged, which is reasonably significant. It is about 5%, you can say.
Yes.
And then once that transfer is done, then there is another stage. When in the records, in the record of rights, the name of the new person is entered. Now we're also trying to make it automatic that as soon as the transfer happens through the sale or through certain inheritance, with the death,
those records also
we are integrating those databases so that once the sale is done or once the death happens, so the name of the next year's or the next owner is automatically, and that fees is small.
Okay, well, that's updating the records. My question, I suppose, was related. At the moment, those villages, as you say, have no records, so they would not have a land record, and they would not normally have a deed. They do not register the transactions with deeds because they're outside those systems, and therefore they do not pay any registration fees or stamp duty or anything. At the moment, when you introduce the system, will they pay mutation fees?
Of course,
they will pay.
Of course.
And they're paying. Okay.
Yes, of course. Everybody pays.
And everyone is paying.
You want to get your name in the records, you got to pay for it. That is something standard. That's nothing unusual.
No, it's not unusual. But what happens, particularly, like I know Maharashtra dropped at one stage their stamp duty was 12% and the registration fee was 2%. But they found that when they dropped the fees to 6% or 1%, they got more registration done and more revenue because they were charging too high fees. Now, if you've got very poor villages, I suspect, and have not had a history of paying fees, there may be some resistance. So that's all my question was in the future.
I think we have to come to that stage. When we come to that stage, we'll get in touch with you.
Okay.
Yes, please.
To get back to my question on what it meant for you that you have this increase in data as institutions. And how to maintain that from the skills perspective of the staff, but also on infrastructure and how you maintain it.
Yes. So as far as maintaining that data is concerned, first of all, we have the baseline for the first time of this accuracy, this resolution, high resolution. So this creates, if you have the raster data of such high resolution, etc., and which is actually in the same geodetic framework that the CRS itself is maintaining. So now if say all the properties have been mapped and the property cards have been given, now there will be discrete cases, and which with the help of the CRS and the village surveyors which are there, and that training program is already means we are in the process. We have the training centers where the surveyors, because ultimately the village surveyors will have to maintain that. This is one part. And then how to manage this data, because it is a database. So we have NIC, the National Informatics Center, and the ministry, under MIT, we have Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So they have, in fact, they are taking care of putting it in a database, in a secure database,
very large database because, Aadhaar, for example, and that would never be breached.
And all best practices, special indexing it, and the best practices of database are being maintained by them. So I think that take care.
And when the property tax, the property card is issued, it actually goes to the DigiLocker of the person. And you can take a printout from this.
And
you get an SMS that you got one.
And if I could answer your question, like how do you do it in the urban scenario? In fact, there is another project which Survey of India has got into the Department of Land Resources, Naksha project in Here again, what we have done is the same drone we have fitted with oblique cameras.
Yeah.
So all the facets, etc. And we are looking at all the property markers. We know that these are the property markers. So we hope to collect around 80% of the property markers. And the balance, say 10%, some hidden vertices are here and there, that we'll be collecting with the CRS, or then we'll be completing the land parcel polygon, and then we'll be proceeding ahead for the cadastral.
That is also being rolled out this year in 150 cities.
Emmanuel, last question. Yes, it's just a quick one. Again, my interest is on the fit for purpose and the accuracy levels. For this kind of work, what is the fit for that purpose, for example? Because if you're talking about 2 centimeters, what else would you be looking for beyond 2 centimeters?
Yes.
But more importantly, you are lucky that you have this infrastructure of course across the country. Now I'm thinking about African countries where we want to replicate something of this nature, where there is hardly any course network in most of these places. So what would you be able to achieve? Would you be able to still keep the costs within that range if you really don't have a cost network in place? So if you factored in, for example, the cost of costs from 100, how far would you go?
So we set up a CORS network for this. We did not have a CRS network.
So the $100
includes. So now you owe me a treat.
That's okay.
The $100 includes that.
No, so thank you very much. I think, and of course, the wealth of questions. So I'm very glad you raised your hand when the Prime Minister asked whether you will take up the program, because it's clearly hugely interesting, and the experience that you shared, and I think will be very much useful for the participants here. And you saw that there are many questions that, and I'm sure there will be more detailed discussion following on that. So we really hope that that will only be the beginning of an exchange between India and other African and Latin American countries who very much suffer this same issues. And where really, I think, the transformational technology that you have been developing. And I think what is really very important, I think, just to remind again, I think the key part is the community involvement, the participatory nature, and that also, I think, that allows the maintenance. And of course, that is where also we are very happy that we have been discussing with the Ministry of Panchayati Raj to actually undertake an impact evaluation that will look at some of these things in much greater detail, and that will also allow us to then actually answer to some of the very specific questions that you had, because these are very important questions. And of course, I think, as was said in the beginning, India is a huge country, and it has very huge diversity from the northeast, where you have essentially tribal villages, to Bangalore, which is completely, I mean, almost, I think, when we were there, Daniel was telling me, look, I'm feeling like in Europe. So I think clearly we learning from this diversity how the general framework that you have developed have been adapted to these specific circumstances can be very insightful to countries, because also in Africa and across the developing world, we see a lot of difference. And so I think we very much look forward to engaging with the Department of Panchayat Raj And we hope that by the next land conference, we actually will have not only greater achievement to show, but also show how communities are actually using this data for planning, for taxation, and how that we actually get credit. What are people doing with these credits? Of course, and so we get more than just 1, 2 people on the video, but we actually see how much in terms of bank loans has that been. But clearly, I think congratulations to the team again. I think we
Can I take a moment to conclude? First and foremost, we want to thank the World Bank. We deeply appreciate the World Bank for hosting us, for enabling this side event. The India team at the World Bank has worked very hard with the last 2 days to make this possible. I thank all of you for showing such an interest in this initiative. We would very much like to share this with other countries. We are ready and willing to send teams to other countries where this can be more widely disseminated, and maybe we can follow it up with other countries. So this can be a very low-cost solution to many of our problems, and it can have huge multiplier effects. So thank you very much for coming.
Organizing, an educational tour also, I think, yes, laws you can consider if there are countries interested, so they can visit and see everything in the field.
Yes. We've already organized for 22 countries.
Right, sir. And the World Bank can facilitate.
Yes. Certainly, sir.
And so some of the participants have shown interest in the presentation, sir.
Yeah, we can share it. We can share the presentation and the.
Yeah, right. And we've taken the contact email with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You have a card?
Thank you.
Thank you. You can use the drawing to show that goes right. Do you have a card?
But like now I'm watching the and they are very much interested also in like, I mean they have also how demonstrate map and I have managed to locations so and actually also I mean someone stepping on your phone. Yeah, but they also languages.